You're listening to the Popoto Pub Final Fantasy XIV podcast with your host, Popo Jagaimo.
Well, lolly ho, everyone. Welcome back to the 8th episode of the Popoto Pub Final Fantasy XIV podcast. I'm here with my guest from Mom's Den, V. V, thank you for being here.
I'm very excited.
Well, for those people that are listening that may not know who you are, could you give a quick rundown of your history and what you do on YouTube and Twitch and everywhere else?
Sure. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ivona. I normally go by V on my channel Mom's Den. I used to actually stream on Twitch, but now I'm almost exclusively on YouTube. So what I do these days is pretty much Final Fantasy content, like all sorts, going from short guides for beginners to reaction videos, Final Fantasy cooking, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. So how did
ask away.
you become a Final Fantasy streamer? Like what was your journey to becoming an FF streamer? I guess what was your journey to streaming in general, to start off with?
I see. Well, I didn't have this like classic MMO route of like going from like one MMO to another. I started streaming as a Hearthstone content creator, and I used to do that exclusively on Twitch. It was kind of like a passion project between me and my husband. We were in our university days, and we were kind of looking for something to do. And we started off streaming together, and we were doing that for probably about a couple of years. But then things between us got a little more serious, and I actually got pregnant, and he had to look for a full-time job, and that's where he kind of drifted away and kind of, let me run the channel, and that's kind of how I became, I guess, a solo streamer for the first time. But eventually I stopped playing Hearthstone. It's probably for the best, even though I still feel that, slight addiction when I go into, Gold Saucer, see all the Triple Triad content, and I'm like, oh, I want to go back to my game, but I shouldn't because, well, I don't know if you know Hearthstone, but yeah, Hearthstone cards cost more than diapers. So that was kind of the breaking point for me. And I decided that it is definitely not worth my time anymore. And also, I had kind of a complicated pregnancy. I had to be on bed rest, and I couldn't compete in tournaments anymore. So I was just kind of looking for something that I could play while laying in bed. Then WoW was always kind of like my side game, and I just kind of switched over it to being a full-time WoW streamer. And as I was getting more and more into the game, I realized that there's a gaping hole in the World of Warcraft content. It's like when you search for WoW guides, you will have guides that are super in depth when it comes to like rotation, parses, logs, mythic bosses, and whatnot. And on the other hand, you'll have guides and content that explain how to turn in a quest, how to, turn around, how to accept a quest, how to, do these very basic things. And as I was trying to learn about World of Warcraft, I realized that I can find guides that are made for beginners, but not total beginners. And that's how I started creating content on YouTube, specifically for World of Warcraft, like very, very simple explanations and guides for raid bosses, and that kind of kicked off. And I was doing that for a while, but over time, I just kind of realized that WoW may not be the best game for me, and they kind of burned my tree. I was a night elf maid, and my tree just turned to ashes. I didn't understand it. I didn't know the reason for it. So when that happened, I kept playing for a few months up until that big blizzard scandal or whatever, and then I just kind of realized that I had enough, and I logged in with my night elf. I took her back to Teldrassil back in time. I logged out, and I never returned. So that same day I started streaming Final Fantasy and got embraced by this wonderful community, and to be honest, I never looked back. So what I did is basically I took the same model of me producing content in World of Warcraft, and I translated it to Final Fantasy because I realized that the whole where there's no content for the semi-beginners is pretty much the same as in World of Warcraft. So that's pretty much what I've been doing.
Yeah, I think it's so hard for people to like when they get into the content creation space. I think it's so often that people have been playing a game for a very, very, very long time. And when you've played a game like I did for World of Warcraft for 16 years, it's really difficult to remember what it was like to be a brand new player.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's not for lack of trying out there, but I think that from that perspective, the further and further you get away from being a beginner yourself, the less perspective you have on what it's like to be a new player oftentimes. And that's something I think that's oftentimes sorely missing in that guide space, in that content creation space.
A lot of pride involved in it. At least that's what I've experienced. Like when I started creating raid guides for World of Warcraft, I actually went ahead and created a series of raid guides for the Raid Finder. And I was frowned upon by pretty much the entire community of content creators out there, being like, "Why are you making these guides? People should know this when they pretty much log in for the first time." I'm like, no, they don't, because I go into Raid Finder. Is it called Raid Finder? I think I'm forgetting the vocab.
Yeah, speaking of which,
But
that's a really horrible from a lore perspective. That's a really horrible name for a difficulty. It
I
makes
know.
because you got Raid Finder, normal, heroic. Heroic makes sense, mythic makes sense, but like calling a difficulty Raid Finder is just kind of funny.
Never really understood the name, so it never really stuck with me. But like I would talk to people within Raid Finder, which I guess in Final Fantasy that would be the equivalent to the duty roulette of a sort. And I
Mm-hmm.
would talk to them and be like, "Do you have problems with this content?" And people would be like, "Yeah, but I don't know how to do this because every single guide that I find is like a heroic guide." And I decided to just kind of, step away from the mindset of expecting people to know things when they enter the content, but at the same time not patronize them. So that's kind of how I ended up creating that series, and the series was very well accepted, like within the player base. I didn't expect it, but I was actually very happy with that. And I realized that it's not just WoW that has that issue. I'm not saying I'm going to go and create guides for the duty roulettes of all sorts, but at the same time, there should be some sort of content that casual players can jump into. Knowing the basics of the game already, knowing how to turn in the quests, knowing how to talk to npcs, how to do whatever in game, but like wanting that step that will take them to the higher end content and therefore higher end guides. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what I do.
Well, and I think that's why so many people refer back to Zepla's like blue plus check, the optional side content that unlocks things. Why so many people refer back to that video. I certainly was when I first picked up FF, because I was like, what are all these blue plus checkmark quests and what do I need to do? And yeah, there's the articles out there. Of course, I still have those bookmarked too, because I still haven't unlocked everything with those just yet. But, that video I think is like 45 minutes long too. So maybe there's a space for something that's, shorter. Like if you want to unlock this, like here are the things to do, or here's where you need to go. Because it takes a little while, like especially with things like Hildebrand or Chocobo racing, which are the things that I'm working on right now. I just don't even know where to start.
Hole too.
Yeah.
I know.
So yeah, that's great that you're creating that type of content and thinking about, how to change your channel, or, not change your channel, but fit your channel more towards this Final Fantasy audience and this new game. But it's interesting. So you didn't play Warcraft for very long. How many years did you, or months, I guess, did you say that you?
5 or 6 years. Like I used to play it while I was playing Hearthstone, but it would never be the game that I was streaming. It would be something to do with my friends. And for a while, we used to have a lot of fun because my friends, like everyone else's friends, used to play World of Warcraft, and now they kind of don't anymore, I guess. I'm very loyal to my MMORPG. When I start playing a game, I have a hard time even playing those like short-term story-based games that take more than like 10 hours to complete or whatever. Like I just want to go home to my game, you know?
Yeah.
And it was very hard to move on from WoW as my favorite game because of all the achievements, all the mounts and everything. I'm a completionist. That's how I play my MMORPGs. And I never felt this thing called content drought. Like for me, that doesn't exist because every time no one's doing anything, I go back and collect things. So I never really get bored. I turned my MMORPG into my home, and I have a very very hard time leaving it. So when the time came to leave WoW, I was like, can I bring these mounts with me and like put it in that
Yeah.
collection, please?
Well, I mean,
It was very hard.
that that sunk cost fallacy. I think we've talked about it with other guests on my shows is a big thing. Like, and MMOs are kind of designed that way, right? Where especially those with a subscription model, where if you leave, for me, 16 years, for you 5 to 6 years of progress is just gone. And it's very difficult to let go of that. And from that perspective, that's a tremendous amount of value for a game, especially, for someone like you who had picked up Warcraft maybe 10 years into its life cycle, 9 years into its life cycle, to just all of a sudden have like all this content. That's kind of what FF is for me. It's like, oh, there's a whole world out there to explore.
I know it's difficult, but ultimately I'm happy. And you know how people often talk about MMORPGs like relationships? Like
Mhm.
once you're done with a relationship, you're done with the relationship, and everything that you've kind of achieved during that relationship, it's good memories, but that doesn't mean you want to, necessarily go back to it. So let's just kind of leave it at that.
Yeah,
I'm fine with my mounts being there and, me never mounting them again,
yeah. I
I
think
guess.
I think for a long time, I mean, the genesis of my channel was really just me working through a breakup, if you want to use the relationship
Oh, I
analogies.
felt these feelings when I watched your videos, and I was like, he gets me.
Well, it was I think just my way of just expressing like how I was feeling, and the whole thing never intended to be I never intended it to be a channel. But then like when I created one video, it kind of felt like therapy in a way to me. It felt like, okay, I made this so long for now, wow, like meme-ish, but also emotional video, and it resonated with a lot of people. And so I made another one, because I think it was the second video I made was like the first FF14 versus WoW video that I did, which no one really talks about, even though it's got like 86,000 views or 87,000 views or something on it. But it was the one Friday night in Final Fantasy 14 versus WoW. And it was me discovering like the Twitch DJs and the house parties in Final Fantasy 14. And I just had this dumb grin on my face the whole evening, just filming Popo in there, and just having a blast of a good time. And then I was sitting there just like thinking about what would I be doing on Friday night in WoW when we weren't raiding, but I would be logged in, but we wouldn't be raiding.
Catching up with Torgas?
Oh God, it's probably sitting around hoping that I didn't have to do Torghast. And let alone do
Oh
Torghast like
gosh.
6 or 7 times on all my alts and everything. Because I just didn't want to do it, which is funny because when Torghast got announced, I was like, oh, this sounds really fun. This sounds like it's my cup of tea. And then all of a sudden it became something I absolutely dreaded doing. Um,
Oh.
but it's funny because I think especially those early videos, it was like my heart and soul like getting poured into like working out how I feel about things, because it was literally just effortless how like the ideas popped into my head. And then over time, that kind of sadness I think morphed a little bit into anger, because I don't know, I was like going through stages. It kind of
Breakup, yeah.
yeah, it kind of morphed into anger, and I started, well, you see things when you're on the other side of a relationship.
Yeah.
You see the things that you were like putting up with, or that you made excuses for, that you shouldn't be making excuses for. Like,
Someone new, you're like, ooh, I shouldn't have been in this relationship for so long.
yeah, I mean, I would sit there and kind of look at like the pay to win stuff, or that if you had talked to me maybe 2 years ago, I would have been like, wow, it's not that pay to win. It's not that bad. That's not that big a deal. Like, WoW tokens are great. It gives people, the ability to buy game time, and there's no pay to win stuff. The stuff that you buy on the auction house isn't that bad, like, and I would be the apologist for all of that stuff. The same thing with the 6-month mount subscription thing. I'd be like, oh, I'm going to be sub for 6 months anyway. They're giving me something free. Great. This isn't using consumer psychology against people.
I mean, yeah, how we just talked about marketing and everything, and that's the knowledge that you have, but you're still like, oh, but this is my favorite game. It's not really like that.
Yeah, and I mean, and when you're in, a toxic relationship, which it seems like, because if you look at the player base in WoW, there are a lot of people still hate playing that game. Like they're playing it, but they hate it. But because they've sunk so much time into it, they're not able to see it.
They're already married and have a lot of kids and a lot of mortgage and stuff.
They've already got all their mounts and all their other stuff, and they don't want to give it up. That's
I get that.
But
then what you can do is you can tell them all about those Final Fantasy mounts that you can get if only you run a certain piece of content 99 times instead of 237 to get an invincible and never get it. And I mean, that's kind of how I got sucked into it. Like, I saw the mount list and I was like, no, this is a store mount list. I'm not even gonna look at it. And then like the list went on and on and on. And I'm like, these are beautiful. Like, are all these store mounts? And then I realized that these are like achievement mounts and like the token mounts that you get from running content. And I'm like, boys, I'm out of here. I'm going to Final Fantasy.
Well, there are so many. There are a lot of store mounts, admittedly in the FF store, and I think that I don't want to be a full apologist for the Final Fantasy store because there are a lot of things that are purchasable.
But the in-game stuff is just as beautiful. That's the thing. Like, if you want to have something pretty, you don't necessarily have to spend money on it. That's kind of what dragged me into it for the first time, because I felt like most of my WoW mounts were either like low res but high achievement mounts that I would spend months grinding on, and then someone just like kind of pays $20 and they have a cool bird, and I'm like riding my low poly, bird that no one even knows where it came from, and it's sad, isn't it?
I remember when I got like the 200. I think it was the 200 mount achievement mount. It's just a dragon hawk. Like, it's a generic Burning Crusade time period dragon hawk that's just a different color. And I remember getting that and going, I'm never going to use this mount. I'm glad that I have it. It's part of my collection, but it's not. Yeah. It didn't feel like a reward at the end of the journey. And you're right, because when you look at the store mounts in Warcraft, they're all pretty unique models, and then pretty much most of the mounts for an expansion are just reskins of other things. They might have pretty different textures on top of it, but the rig underneath it is the same rig. It's the same bear rig that they've been using for forever. It's just got prettier armor or different things on it. But then you go to the store mount and they're like, here's a fox mount that's unique, and here's that cat mount, which I think is ridiculous for the Warcraft universe, with the sun-warmed feline.
I know.
Like, here's a cat. I'm trying to think of the other things that were at the time like completely unique and only obtainable in terms of like a model.
The blue bird that like went up in the air and like spread its wings, and I think that's the last 6 months mount that I received. I can't really remember what it's called, but that one, like, I got that one, and then like people would just like spit on me, and I wanted to spit on myself too. Come out of here.
Well, I mean, that leads to a whole nother thing with the toxicity of the FF14 community, or not FF14, sorry, FF14. Yeah. They're not toxic. I mean, there are toxic elements, but not like the Warcraft element where it's just, the player base. And I think that's what it comes from, right? Is everyone's like angry in Warcraft all the time. They're angry because they didn't get that.
Because they're at work. They're at work.
Yeah.
They're not playing a game.
Because they didn't get that RNG drop, because their weekly chest wasn't good to them this week, because they're sick of running Torghast. They're sick of running Mythic Pluses. They're angry that someone ruined their keys. Everyone's angry over there all the time. And it's exhausting, honestly.
And fault is no one's really. Like, it's not their
Mm.
fault.
No, I mean,
It's,
people experience what they experience. So,
yeah, that's true.
and that's something, from a content creator journey perspective that I've been, I don't want to say struggling with recently, but that anger and that frustration, that breakup phase type of thing is slowly dissipating, right? Which is what the genesis of my channel was. I'm still seeing things. I still honestly, I just want to rescue like Warcraft players and say like, there's this whole other community and like better world over here. Like, give it a shot. Like, just give it a shot in the free trial and see if you like it. But there's so many, that are still stuck over there that I wish that I could rescue.
I think that World of Warcraft as a game will just forever remain as an ecosystem because you will have so many of these communities that are enough for themselves because the guild as in like the free company system is so developed in WoW that you will just have these group of people who have been playing the game for the past 15 years, and unless everyone collectively moves to another game, they're just going to continue to play together. And within their ecosystem, they don't really care about anything that happens on the outside. They don't interact with toxic people because they only talk to their guild,
Right.
and they have a good time. So I think that a lot of people in World of Warcraft still have a very, very good time, but they're like closed communities. You know, like when you walk into like a high school backyard and you see like these like different, groups of people. It's like everyone who didn't belong to well, not everyone, I shouldn't be saying that, but like a lot of people who didn't belong to any of those communities decided to go and look for something else, but those communities will still remain and pretty much unaware of like what happens around them because they are self-sustainable.
Yeah. And I say I want to rescue like Warcraft refugees, but really, I mean, if you're having fun with World of Warcraft, great, play it. Like it's a free world. Just play what you want to play.
A
But
free world.
uh
Is it free?
not maybe not really, but
Yeah.
but at the same time, like with video game choice, there's some freedom in that in our entertainment
Yeah,
choices.
definitely.
But it's if you want to play Warcraft, like great, play Warcraft, play whatever you want. But if you're playing Warcraft still to this day and hating every second of it, and I know that there are a lot of people out there still doing it because there are a lot of people out there who are still, I see other streamers and content creators, their whole channels are just and my channel's kind of guilty of this too, but I think mine's more comedic than some others. But there are other channels out there that are just hating on World of Warcraft all day, every day. And I'm like, you look miserable. You're not making fun of it in kind of like a tongue in cheek type of way, but like you look miserable. Like try
I mean,
something else.
hate is a very exhausting way to spend your day for
Mm,
sure. And when I first started feeling it, I realized that I absolutely have to move on
mm,
and ignore everything that happens within the community for a while. And I did that. I don't think I pushed my feelings under the carpet, but now I'm fine. Like I look at it, I don't feel like resentment or anger or anything like that. I still I don't know, like I do look at World of Warcraft like an ex-partner of a sort who, used to be dear to me at some point, and I really want them to succeed and be happy and, move on and have a good time, but I don't want to be a part of it.
yeah. Well, I when I look at it now, it's just pretty much sadness, right? I look at it and I- I'm not sad for myself anymore, but I'm sad for the state of those universes. I'm sad for and more importantly, the state of that company because it's horrible seeing what went on over there. Like it's ridiculous and absurd, and especially with a company that spent so long saying like we do things better than ever. Like we're the gamer friendly company and we're about inclusiveness and family and all these different things, and then you see what's really underneath all that, and it's just kind of like you have your image of something that you admired and aspired to kind of shattered. And so that's the kind of sadness that I get now, and the sadness for the people that had to go through all this stuff. And I like I said, I'm with you. I hope that they can be better. I hope that the company can be better for the employees that are there. I hope that they can tell better stories. I hope all this stuff happens. But I'm over here now, and I'm having a great time, and I just don't want those problems to follow me over here, I guess is the best way to describe it. But I want people to know that there is an option, because I think that there are a lot of people that felt like, Warcraft's the MMO, and if you're not playing Warcraft, then you shouldn't be playing MMOs, or you don't have a choice, or you're in a less cool clique, that you mentioned, the high school thing. You're in the not as cool kids clique or something like that, and it's just simply not the case anymore. If you like any game now, it's just you should have that choice to play what you want to play, whether it be FF, whether it be Lost Ark, even though I have my issues with Lost Ark and their monetization scheme, but at least it's a upfront free to play game.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Blizzard as a company is very good at making you feel like their products are all there is out there. I pretty much lived in a bubble of their launcher, and the launcher
Mhm.
is so overwhelming with different products. And that is something that Blizzard as a company does very well. Something that, in my opinion, Square Enix and especially the Final Fantasy XIV department should kind of look into, because they do suck you into this cycle of like playing this game, and then when there's downtime playing that game or whatever, which is pretty much the reason why I have no history with other Final Fantasy games
Oh,
whatsoever.
wow.
I can, yeah, I am completely new to Final Fantasy XIV universe. I would even go as far as to say that I haven't even heard of any other Final Fantasy games up until I heard of Final Fantasy XIV, because no one from my community of friends or even viewers was playing it. It was completely new to me, and it was so overwhelming to suddenly jump into this world and realize just how many hours of gameplay I could be having, or I could have been having. Instead, I was, I don't know, farming the mounts that I was never gonna get, and I was just like stuck in this cycle of not really having fun. And in a way, that made me feel a bit overwhelmed in Final Fantasy XIV, because even though people told me that I'm not gonna feel like I'm missing out, uh, and that I have to catch up. I still feel like I have to catch up on like the overall Final Fantasy lore, because of a lot of references between Final Fantasy XIV and other games,
Mhm.
like the Final Fantasy XV event with the Regalia car. Was it 15? I think
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
15. I'm sorry, I don't know these games. I need
It's
to
it's
play
it's
them.
fine. I would say 15 is one of the lesser loved Final Fantasies, so you're okay not understanding that one.
Yeah, like, but I want to,
Mhm.
because as someone who has a lot of appreciation for the lore and who really wants to know these things, I feel like I'm missing out. I think I completely missed out on the experience of the entirety of Nier raids. I kept promising myself that I would play those Nier games, even though they're not specifically Final Fantasy, but I really wanted to. I just never got around to do it. And then the MSQ, was progressing, and it was the time for me to go there, and I knew nothing, and I felt like I didn't connect with the story at all. And I'm going to be honest, the first time I heard of Final Fantasy XIV as a game, well, actually, I I didn't even hear about the game per se. I was watching a music video, and I think it was like Eminem cover that like had in-game footage of some game, and someone told me that it's Final Fantasy. And around the same time, I heard about Final Fantasy XIV, and my brain just connected these two pieces. And I'm like, okay, that's Final Fantasy XIV. It turned out not to be. It turned out to be like Final Fantasy 11. So when I logged into the Final Fantasy 14 for the first time, I'm like, "Ooh, that's the game that I saw."
Yeah, a little
but
bit different of a graphical engine there for sure.
definitely, definitely. But that's what I was expecting the first time I logged in. That's how little I know of the rest of the games. But I'm giving myself like a couple of years to just
Mhm.
kind of tap into Final Fantasy universe itself, not just Final Fantasy 14. I want to know these things. I want to know lore.
Yeah, it's exciting. And you mentioned the closed ecosystem model, the BattleNet launcher. And yeah, I mean, I was guilty of that too. I used to say like I just play Blizzard games because that's the program I open up first. So if I don't want to play World of Warcraft, I'll play Diablo or StarCraft I really loved Heroes of the Storm. Heroes of the Storm was one of my favorite games in that ecosystem. And then when they just stopped supporting it randomly out of nowhere, I got so upset because I felt like I invested all this time and energy and love into something that all of a sudden the company just goes, it's a lost cause. But let's leave Blizzard aside. So it's interesting that you don't have a history with Final Fantasy, because I think most gamers have at least some small history with Final Fantasy because it's been around for so long.
Oh, when I was a kid, like I played my Sega, but like I was playing like arcade games and Lion King and whatnot, Mario, and I just never tapped into Final Fantasy. Like, where were those games?
Yeah,
Right?
to me, I've got such a history of Final Fantasy because I don't say Final Fantasy is the game that saved me from not being a gamer, but it kind of is. Like Final Fantasy VII, when I found that game, I had never really played an RPG before. The only other one, I played the Super Mario RPG on Super Nintendo, which I really loved, but I never really played another like type of like Japanese RPG. And I think I just bought Final Fantasy VII off of a whim because I saw a review for it in Game Informer magazine or something like that, and it blew my mind because I never thought that a story in a game could be anything more than just this silly Mario story or something like that where princess gets captured by dragon turtle and you just the Mario games are wonderful, but it's so simplistic. Um but then you have this whole world just opened up to me after I realized like the story of Final Fantasy VII and this world creation and everything. And that's what saved me from going from like, maybe I don't want to play games anymore because I'm just not enjoying it. I'm enjoying other things to now like, oh, I need to explore this whole new world that opens up to me. And similarly, at the same time, I think Resident Evil was the other game that came out around that same time period that when I played that, I was like, okay, the genre of gaming is evolving. Now we've got horror movies and games, and I was kind of locked in from that point forward. But it's interesting. I don't think you have to feel. You said you felt like kind of overwhelmed with like all the different stories and content. And keep in mind, you finished Endwalker, right? Okay, so you finished Endwalker. That was 10 years of story there. That's like playing through 5 Final Fantasy games in a way. So catching up to that, take your time to catch up to that. It's so different than Warcraft where everything is the end game, and Final Fantasy is about the journey. And yes, there is an end game there waiting for you, but it's about the journey along the way too. And now that you're at that end game, like Yoshi P's like, go play other games, go explore other things, and you've got that time to where you don't have to do the grind.
I'll stay. Live there.
Oh, you just want to live in 14?
I don't play any other games. I'm hopeless. Like if I don't know what to do with myself, I'll just go to Gold Saucer. I live there. Sorry, I'm not going anywhere.
No,
I can't. It's over.
I mean, and I was that way too for a while. Like when I first got into 14, it was like, okay, I'm just gonna mono game this world and just have fun here and I could do that. I could certainly do that, but I think that there's an appreciation too for the fact that like I can take a week off if I want to and play something else. Like this weekend, I'm playing Tiny Tina's Wonderlands because I'm a big Borderlands fan, and not feel guilty about, oh, you better do your Torghast for this week. If you don't do it by Monday, you're behind.
Me, it's a little different. Like when people ask me, for example, if I'm more of a movie or a TV show type of person, I will always say TV show because I don't really like these like short-term commitments. Like I'd much rather play a game that pretty much lasts forever, like an MMORPG, than have to go through like an existential crisis of like finishing one game and then being like, what now?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I definitely want to explore other Final Fantasy games. But for now, I'm just happy to log into FF and just even if I'm AFKing and just chatting to my FC people or people in Limsa or whatever, or if I'm just there in the Gold Saucer listening to the tunes or playing cards or whatever, that's where I feel at home. And I don't know, like I haven't looked back since.
Well, and I think FF does such a good job at the living world thing, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Where you could be in the Gold Saucer and every 20 minutes you hear that little chime and that bell for the gates that pop up and you're like, something's happening, let me march over there and have some fun. And it's that's something I think that's been sorely missing. I apologize to keep going back to Warcraft, but it's such a
Okay.
level
Yeah.
of comparison for people who have played it, because a lot of us came over to FF in the refugee wave or shortly before that, or were just playing Final Fantasy like it was a solo game before that. Is I remember the this was probably before your time playing Warcraft, but the best moments in Warcraft, like that everyone has these nostalgic memories of from Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King and classic vanilla WoW, were those living world moments where you were in a city just typing with chatting with people either in your guild, or that was what brought people together. And my friend and I were discussing this last night and talking about how like they implemented this thing called sharding, where now for people on low population servers it looks like there's more people in the city than there would have been otherwise, but for the people who are in high population servers it actually looks like there's less people because they had to make the servers to where like it balanced out the number of people. So now the cities feel more dead than alive. And I
Yeah.
remember what the cities used to feel like in World of Warcraft. Just, they were laggy. We used to call like
Yeah.
Dalaran Lagaran because it was so laggy.
I remember having to log in to WoW in Dwarven District when I had my old PC because I couldn't log in next to the fountain. That's where my Hearthstone was, and the auction house that I used to go to because I couldn't go to the center of Stormwind.
and and that's something I think that Yoshi P is very conscious of, because in hearing him, he answered a question really interestingly that I was kind of surprised to hear his answer to, because it was one of the first times I had heard Yoshi P tell the community basically no. And here's my reason why. And the question that he got was about the G pose system. I don't know if you've gotten deep into that yet, but I'm kind of addicted.
Yep.
Okay. So when you're in G pose, like you have to, now it freezes time when you go in, but
Yeah.
it also you also can't like change the weather and everything before you
Yes.
go in. And people asked for the ability to change the weather at any point in time when you're in G pose, and Yoshi P said no, which I thought that seems like an odd hill to like tell the community no. But his rationale was solid, because he said, just like in the real world, there's these moments where the light hits you just the right way, or you get inspired because you're in a certain setting or something like that. And that's how it should feel in the game. It shouldn't feel like you can just change everything around you, because then that cheapens the photos that you would take when you get that really inspiring moment, in the right weather conditions, in the right time of day, at the right place. And I thought that was a
I mean,
really
G
good
pose
answer.
is like a really big part of the game, and it's equal to all the rest of the parts of the game. So if you
Mm-hmm.
could technically change the weather in G pose, why couldn't you do that while fishing? When you need like certain weather conditions to catch fish, it's in-game content. Why would the G posers get to do that if the fishers don't? So
Mm-hmm.
there's that.
I think there's all those Animal Crossing players out there who do the cheat thing where they change the time of day, and they do the time traveling thing by changing the time on their system so that they can get everything all at once. Um, I wouldn't want to see that in FF for sure.
No, definitely not. And this is the first time I'm hearing about it, so hopefully the last one,
Yeah.
last time too.
Well, there's two communities in Animal Crossing. Those that play the game, as it's intended, right?
Mhm.
Where you just do what's available during the days. If something's not on a seasonal holiday, then it's you just wait until it is, and it feels like that living world. And then there's the people that go, well, I don't want to wait for Halloween for this to happen, so I'm going to change the date on my game system to October 31st, and just go do it. Um, it's a very different way to play Animal Crossing, but I think
Definitely.
that's probably the way that 14 should go, is keeping it very time synced and everything. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna sneeze here. Oh, excuse me.
It's you.
But no. So you mentioned Gold Saucer. So that's obviously a part of your Final Fantasy end game. So what does your Final Fantasy 14 endgame look like? Because here we have choice, so it could be a lot of different things. What's your endgame look like? Like, what do you enjoy doing in the game, and what's that endgame makeup look like?
Depends on the time of the week, I guess, because my life currently works in a really strange way. During the working week, like Monday to Friday, I'm very limited when it comes to the amount of things that I get to do, because that's the time that I spend with my kid. So I can only play realistically during the night, and that's normally when I will do content that isn't intended for streaming. And that's normally when I will do my completionist content, whether it's like collecting achievements or leveling other jobs or just getting to know the game systems and whatnot. But the real meat of the game, it's funny for me to say meat because I'm a vegetarian, but I don't know another word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like I always like look forward to weekends because that's when I stream, and when I stream I try to do more of the lore content, like basically catching up with all these quest lines that I haven't gotten to do. For example, let's say I'm leveling a job from like I don't know 1 to 90. During the week, like Monday to Friday, I would I don't know I level like from 1 to 50 or whatever, and then during the weekend, I will have realized that I was playing with half of my job's toolkit because I haven't been doing my job quests. But then I would do the lore and like go over all these things that I feel like I've missed out on. So weekends would normally be the time that I tap into like the side content, like side stories, like Scholasticate, like Hildebrand, like job quests, even though technically they're not side content, but some people just skip over the quest, and I actually really enjoy those storylines. I think they're terrific. So that is normally what I do. I've been promising myself to get into like more end game type of content. So far, I think I've only done like extreme trials and within like the current season. My life has been a little hectic in the past few months, so I haven't really been able to get myself into raiding consistently. But that is something that I want to. My recent obsession has been PvP, at least trying to like learn more about it and kind of getting to know the structure of PvP and learning how to actually use those tools. For me, it's so cool to be able to log to enter the content with pretty much any job that you have and have this toolkit that you can use regardless of the level that your job is. And I feel like PvP is only about to get big in Final Fantasy XIV. I think that they admittedly haven't put enough effort into PvP when it comes to the like in comparison to the PvE content. But I honestly think that they're getting there, and I'm so optimistic about what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing. So that's pretty much what I do in FF. And when I don't do that, I play cards.
Gotcha. So with Crystalline Conflict that's coming out here relatively soon, probably within
Yeah.
the next month or so. Do you think that mode is going to be incredibly popular, much more so than previous PvP systems have been? And if so, like, why do you think that it'll be more popular?
I think what Final Fantasy needs to do first is make these modes not more available to players, but more obvious to players. Because most players who will casually get themselves into any sort of PvP content will do it through daily roulettes, and the only daily roulette option for you is frontlines. So you will see most of the casual PvP player base there, and it takes a surprising amount of effort for Final Fantasy players to actually click through these like different icons, go to the sword one, find the mode that they want to play and go there. It's easier to just see that mode as like one of your daily roulettes or whatever. Like I feel like that's one of the big flaws when it comes to PvP. I honestly believe that Final Fantasy needs more daily PvP content that will be right in front of you. Like I know clicking on it isn't that hard, but there's not a lot of people who will just like click on the PvP icon on a daily basis and do the content, but they'll do a frontline because that is on their daily to-do list. So I think that that is something that they need to work on. But if this particular PvP mode proves to be fun and engaging, I can see people actually making a conscious effort into entering that PvP mode, and I really hope to see that. From the announcements that I've seen about it, like they're advertising it as as a casual PvP content that pretty much anyone can tap into, but PvP players or anyone who really wants to get into that type of content, they usually don't have a casual nature. Like if you're a PvPer, you don't go there to, to have fun. You go there to pew pew, and those feelings are inherently competitive. So I do believe that apart from it just being casual, it has an enormous potential to actually grow a PvP scene, and I am so excited for it. I think the mode is great because a group of 5 players is just about enough to not make you feel like a Zerk. Just kind of like enter a front line and be invisible and be able to pew pew, but also be able to AFK if you don't know what you're doing or whatever. It creates an opportunity for interaction. I think 4 people is a little bit of a small group, but 5, just probably because of my World of Warcraft background, because dungeons are 5 men dungeons or whatever. I shouldn't say men, people dungeons. I think that I really used to like the 5 people composition within World of Warcraft. Now I'm used to 4 people within a dungeon, but I think for this particular mode, 5 people is just about enough. And the fact that there are no role matchmaking requirements that you're gonna need to go through is perfect. Like you could have like 5 healers doing damage and still winning if they know what they're doing. You can play what you want, which I think is good. Because I don't know if you play like Frontlines or
I would do my daily frontline roulette for leveling,
okay,
so I've got everything capped, and
right,
part of the strategy for leveling everything was frontlines was an excellent source of XP because you get like half a
yeah,
level for 15 minutes or so of doing one of those. So I would do that, but it was too chaotic. Like you said, it's like a Zerg rush, and you as an individual player don't. I would say even on the highest end of the skill spectrum, you don't feel like you're having an impact on the match, right? If you're out there on your own, you can't go solo and Rambo, something, unless someone just happens to be one-on-oneing like, a base, like standing in a base by themselves. But the instant that there's 3 or 4 people there, you're just, toast. No matter how good you are, I feel like. And that to me is the biggest problem, I want to say, with Final Fantasy 14 PvP in its current iteration is, like you said, one, everyone just does front lines because it's part of the roulette system. Why isn't rival rings part of that roulette system?
clue.
Why isn't the what was the arena, the World of Warcraft arena? They call it something else here. I'm blanking on it.
Feast?
The
Right.
feast, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've still have yet to get into a feast match. I queue up, and it's a 35-minute queue for a small arena match, and that's problematic too. I really want
Because
to
you can't
try
queue
that.
for anything else. You want to, but then you're kind of locked out of all the other content. I
Yeah.
think that's sorry for interrupting. I actually
No.
think that that's one of the things that World of Warcraft does do right. Like when you queue for I want to say duty finder, like raid
Hmm.
finder, you can queue for multiple different instances. I think last time I played it was up to 5. And that was just very convenient because you feel like whenever your game or
Hmm.
your raid or instance ends, you can jump into another one because one of those queues will be popping. So
Yeah.
I really wanna see that in Final Fantasy at some point, and I think it would help with those duties that take a longer time. Because imagine being able to queue for frontlines, but then you also have the time to do your trials, your normal raids or whatever,
Hmm.
and 30 minutes goes by, and you can just queue into a game and play it without AFKing and Limsa feeling like you have nothing to do.
Yeah. And so because of that, I've never really had much of an experience in the small scale PvP space with the feast, where I think that this game would shine more than in the front lines, like the PvP. Because, and that's why I'm very curious to see Crystalline Conflict. One, I think they've done a better job with like the reward system. I think the battle pass, for lack of a better term, the seasons and series things that they're doing, but it's a battle pass.
It
You
is,
just
yeah.
don't have to pay extra for it. Um, is is a good model, right? Because it keeps things condensed within a time
Yeah,
frame.
it's motivating.
It's motivating. It's gonna, I think, encourage a lot more people to try that mode out. Is my guess. Um, I think also when you can feel like a hero, right? When you can have those moments of individual glory is what PvP is all about. Like when you can 2v1 a situation and somehow come out alive. Like that's what feels great about PvP. And that's why I think people love MOBAs, like League of Legends and Dota and MOBAs in particular, is because you have those hero ball moments, as we sometimes call them, where you can just turn the tide of a battle on your own. Um, and it feels bad on the other side
Being
of that,
good
but
matters. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah. And I hope that Crystalline Conflict does that. I'm actually a little bit concerned that because it's filtering everybody into, basically one lane, you're pushing that crystal because it's pushed the payload like Overwatch. I'm a little worried that even with the 5 people there, that it's going to feel congested. It's going to feel like a little bit too chaotic, like a Frontlines, but on a smaller scale. And I wish, and this is my like idea that I've been working on, and I've been trying to put together a script for this video, but I'm still like collecting my thoughts on what I want the system to look like. But I think a 5v5 3-lane MOBA, just like League or Dota or Heroes of the Storm, could work out really well, because then you're separating people out into lanes and you're isolating the combat to 1v1. And part of what I'm
I
thinking about
see.
is the system that you could build on top of that. Like Rival Wings has that kind of upgrade system as a part of it, but I don't think it's done very well. But I'm borrowing some elements from other games like Paladins and Smite and a few of those other games. And I'm trying to figure out like what's the right combination, what's the right talent system, the leveling system within the match, like a MOBA has, where you level up and everything. What's jungling look like? What maybe items isn't necessary? Maybe the talent trees are enough that let you customize and specialize in different things. But I think that separation makes it more interesting, because now it's it's a gunbreaker versus a warrior in the top lane or something like that, or it's this versus this in this lane. And yeah, you have those moments where everyone comes together, but then you have the moments that are really important for the big early game where everyone's apart and having to handle their own business. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
that to me, I
It,
think would be
it's
a
good
better
feedback.
system.
I feel like the community, including yourself, we have so many good ideas, but I think fundamentally what these PvP modes are lacking is marketing. And maybe Final Fantasy 14 hasn't really been marketing PvP because admittedly they knew that it just isn't good enough right now to be marketed, and they don't want to be like, hey, we're a PvP game, but in reality there are these glaring issues. So maybe
Mhm.
they're just like keeping it on the back burner for now, just kind of waiting for, for them to feel like they are completely satisfied with the product. But I feel like once more people start getting into PvP, you will have these veteran PvP players from other games as well, like World of Warcraft and other games, who will uh, provide this invaluable feedback on how this can be done better. And I feel like that moment for PvP hasn't quite arrived yet into FF14, and that's why I'm very optimistic. I also think that people haven't really been putting a lot of effort into learning
Mhm.
their job skills in PvP. Most of the time, you will just log in, you will see your different skills, and I know very few people who will go out of their way to open the PvP skill set, take out the spells, bind them, and actually use them. Most people will just run around with the spells that the game just
Yeah.
puts on their hotbar by default. And I feel like that is kind of a problem. And I've been thinking about how that can be overcome once people start gaining interest for PvP. And I've been looking into ways to join up with some PvP communities and to actually start creating the type of content that I was talking about at the beginning of the podcast. Something that would help new players who know the basics of the game but aren't quite ready for the high end content just yet to be able to listen to a video guide that is like 2 or 3 minutes long that will just tell them the basics about their PvP job. And after that video, they get something valuable, their time isn't wasted, and they know the essence of what they need to do. And from that, they are ready for the more advanced, like, I don't know, PvP guides, content, posts, whatever. And that is something that I'm extremely motivated for when it comes to this year and the content that I would like to start doing. So yeah, I think it would help the community, because if you have more resources for people to learn from, you will have more people playing the game. And if you have more people playing the game, the queues are shorter, and it just becomes something that more people do on a daily basis. And that is honestly something that I want to see for FF14 PvP.
Yeah. My other thought, so the balance issue, right? When you say it's just maybe just not good enough at this point, like that very well may be the case, right? And I don't, because I haven't got to do Feast much, and the only content creator slash streamer that I know that really focuses on Final Fantasy PvP is Brian Ricardo. He's the only one that I know who's been, you know, streaming it regularly and does content for it. So much so that Zeppela interviewed him for her channel. But I wonder too, you know, if the balance is decent, which I think is a lot easier to do than in like World of Warcraft, because the skill system is completely separate. That's one of the brilliant things I think that there is about it, is that, you know, you have different abilities and you have different skills, and they've kind of truncated some of the rotations and everything based on that. They have that flexibility to go like, well, if this isn't balanced in PvP, we can balance it here without affecting the PvE. And we can balance the PvE without affecting the PvP, which is really nice, I think, from a game design perspective. But my other thought is that maybe the reason that they're not pushing PvP as much as they could, or as much as they have in the past, is because they know that the like community is very important to the game, and the lack of toxicity in the community is something that is, you know, very intentional by design, right? Like that they're worried that the more you invite PvP into it, like you said at the very beginning of our PvP discussion, it's about pew-pewing and but it's also an inherently competitive, kind of aggressive thing, and maybe they don't want to emphasize it that much.
Yeah, but should I don't know, I think we should give our community more credit.
I
It's like
agree, but
we know where it, you know, it's pew time, and where it's time to, you know, release your inner beast and go pew other players. And like when you get out of it, you're still a really nicely dressed Mikote dancing in Liv Solomon's head. You're suddenly not in the front line or the feast anymore, and those feelings don't matter anymore in a way.
yeah.
So I want to believe that that's how people perceive PvP and FF.
I hope so too. But you know, if you look at like Mythic Plus, right? Like Mythic Plus has that inherent competitive, you know,
Yeah.
just look at dungeon runs in Warcraft versus dungeon runs in FF, and how different players treat each other in those spaces. You know, in World of
I
Warcraft,
don't think it's about the players though. I think it's exclusively about the in-game system, because the in-game system is so punishing.
Right.
The timer and the affixes that basically make the community turn on that one person who messes something up within the run, like that is pretty much what creates that toxicity. It's the high stakes of queuing into a dungeon with your own key that you worked so very hard for, and then someone makes a mistake and you don't know what to do. Like you just want to, you know, yell at them and kick them out of the group, which you normally do.
That's exactly why, you know, I don't think it's the people, right? I think you're right.
Yeah,
it's the system
exactly.
that corrupts the people.
Yes, definitely.
But like if you put in a MOBA, or you put in a Crystalline Conflict, even if you've got that one person that's dead weight in that group and they ruin your win, does that then perpetuate in that PvP
I think you need
too?
to lower the stakes. I think currently in Final Fantasy XIV, the stakes are your time invested into queuing for that type of content. If you were to queue into Crystalline, and if Crystalline isn't popular enough, and if it takes you 40 minutes of doing nothing else and not being able to queue for any other type of content, and if you queue, your stake is your time. It's not the key. It's not some sort of reward. You just care about those 40 minutes that you spent waiting to get there, and that's why you're turning on that person. So if only the queue times were shorter, people could be like, okay, you know, this was a kind of a failed 5-minute run. I'll just do another one. But you can't do another one. At best, you can do one frontline run a day, because the queue during the night and early mornings, at least here on Light on Lich, is over 30 minutes. At best, if you manage to luck into finishing your frontline roulette, it takes you more than 30 minutes to queue if you're not playing during prime times. And that's what's really punishing about it. If they solve that problem, I don't think there will be these negative feelings, because like it's the same with like duty roulettes and other dungeons as well. Like you have a less than 5 minutes queue, and if you wipe, so what? Like no one's really stressed out because they just queued in, they instantly like queued into a dungeon, and they don't feel like their time's been wasted because of that. And I feel like there's an enormous potential. There's so many people within the Final Fantasy community, and if only that type of content was more approachable and made people queue more, they would solve a lot of these problems. And I honestly don't think that
Yeah.
these feelings would be something that, like, I don't know, corrupts the community. I'm sorry.
Right. I can't recall in Crystalline Conflict, is there a ranking system? Like, is there a are there ladders? Are there Diamond League?
Into it
all
that
these different
much,
things?
to be honest.
Or is it just the battle? Is it just the battle
I
pass
think
series season?
I
of the
think
wars?
that I'm don't take my word for it because I haven't looked into it that much. But I think every single like Final Fantasy content has some sort of way for you to check like where you're at. Even the front lines, have a list of I don't know, people at the end of the front line to see who got the most kills or whatever. Even like the Verminion tournaments that I don't know if you play Verminion. No,
Play.
Verminion.
No, I haven't got into that yet.
Okay.
I've started the tutorial, but I haven't got into that fully yet.
Okay, well, there's tournaments anyway, and if they have a ranking system, if Triple Triad has a ranking system for the tournaments or whatever, like I don't see why there wouldn't be at least some sort of way to rank people to like when they do that type of content. I'm gonna have to look deeper into that.
Well, my fear is there, right? Is that if the reward at the end of doing this is just how many experience points you get in your battle pass, that's not very punishing if you lose. You could still have your hero ball moment and feel good, but still lose, but then still get your points. Like that's one thing I think is they can make that feel decent. But my fear is if thinking about like League and the toxicity in like League, a lot of it is like, don't mess up my solo queue. I'm doing this for my ranking, but other like 4 other players can have an impact on my ranking.
Yeah.
Don't mess up my solo queue, is a big thing. That would be my fears if you
still don't understand that. Like, how is that solo?
Yeah, well, it's not, but you're not queuing as a full team, right?
Yeah,
so,
I get that.
But I think that's where the problem with like Mythic Plus runs goes is that other people's performance has an impact on your rank, on that little badge that makes you so proud, and that's where a lot of that frustration and anger probably comes from.
People in World of Warcraft turn towards their own guildies. In Final Fantasy, you have a very open community. You can have your FC, but you also have your friend list. You also have your like link shells. You have people around you that are willing to do content. In World of Warcraft, you only exclusively want to do content with the people you trust.
Yeah.
When you have to go through Party Finder in World of Warcraft, it's a very desperate feeling to not have anyone and to put your key into the hands of strangers and be like, please don't destroy this for me. You just really want to trust your players, and it kind of just destroys these opportunities for you to meet someone new through content. At most, like the people that you will remember, like the people who you randomly like queue with or whatever, are the people who mess up your runs. You normally don't like add people who do well. They go their own way and you never meet them again. And I think that's one of the reasons why the communities are so close. You want to have like a group of very good people who are always available and who you're going to do things with, and they will all blame each other, but they will all continue to play with one another because they're a community. So
right.
That's kind of how it works.
Well, I mean, Preach has that thing where he says like, how do you know a Mythic Plus run's going to end in disaster? Someone says hi at the beginning of the run. Because you're not there to talk to each other, you're there to get business done, and it's so true. But I'm really I didn't realize how into PvP you were, and I haven't been able to have a really good discussion about PvP with a guest. So thank you, because like it always feels like that thing
I
that's
love
like
it.
just a me thing, and like everyone's also like, oh, I like the story, or I like dungeons, or
I
this and that.
like the story, don't
Oh,
get me wrong,
me
but I
too.
also like to pew pew, so
Right. Right. To me, that's the one missing link in Final Fantasy in terms of, you know, what there is to do in the end game. Because the
yeah.
casual side of things, the housing side of things, island sanctuaries, I think is going to be awesome. Um, there's so many fun things to do. If you want to do hardcore raiding, it is there for you, in Savage and Extremes. Like you have those options available for you in those traditional end game type of things, but then you have so many other things: chocobo racing, verminion, triple triad. Hell, if you want to play mahjong, you could just be a mahjong champion.
Say it. I don't even know how to pronounce.
Yeah, mahjong.
Okay, now I know. Thanks.
And there's so many different things you could do, but the one thing that's missing that I think World of Warcraft has is a PvP community and a
Yes,
PvP scene, and
definitely.
I think that's the one thing that's needed, I think, in FF. But I do have my fears that it might create this like toxic subculture. But my fears for myself as I negotiate this in my own mind, I think because so many systems are separate from one another in Final Fantasy, the end game is very modular, I guess is the best term for it, where rating's over here and it doesn't affect your PvP, and your PvP's over here and it
Definitely.
doesn't affect your chocobo racing, and your chocobo racing's over here and it doesn't affect this. That there's not the synergy between all of it, where you get like the raiders in World of Warcraft who maybe there's a piece of PvP gear that randomly is better than, for something like that. So you get these people that feel like they have to PvP to get the best item, and that's just never going to be the case in FF. So
Really disappointed with the PvP system in World of Warcraft because I'm a huge fan of battlegrounds, and that is something that got me into PvP at first. But the thing about battlegrounds is, you probably know it since you've played World of Warcraft, but some people might not. Battlegrounds is very similar to Frontlines. You have less people queuing, and you have like Alliance versus Horde. But at the same time, it is the content that really attracts me. I really, really love battlegrounds, but at the same time, when you are done gearing your character with a battleground, you are still not reaching that end game. It's like a B tier content that you can't really do much with. But if you want to do competitive battlegrounds, you are just not able to do that because first of all, the competitive battleground system is a 10v10 in WoW, and mostly those groups will be pre-made from larger World of Warcraft PvP guilds. Or if they happen to be looking for a new member, you already have to have a high rating or have to have gear that if you just want to do PvP, you have no other way of obtaining. And normally you can't really get yourself into a 10v10. That's why I'm really looking forward to Crystalline, and I do believe that having an influx of more casual players will not create the situation where the casual players just can't get into that 5v5 content because the stakes are not as high because you're like what's the rating called I can't even remember in WoW. Like
arena
that was
rating,
yeah, like
or
that thing.
battlegrounds rating, I guess. And then there's
Yes.
Raider
Yeah.
IO is the thing for the PvE side of things.
Yeah, I meant like exclusively the battlegrounds because those 10v10 battlegrounds are the ones who will give you the currency to buy yourself the best gear. So if you don't happen to get yourself into a 10v10 group that will win consistently or at least win somewhat, you just can't get the best gear, and it's very very hard to get into that type of content. And I feel like 10 people for a coordinated attack is a little bit too much.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I always felt like cutting that number in half would be perfect, and now there's Crystalline. So I'm
Mhm.
excited.
Yeah, I've got hopes for it. I'm really hopeful for it. I hope that it's good. I hope that people participate, because I would really like to like make
Too.
conflict for, or make content for it as well. So yeah, I don't know. It's that's fun. So let's shift gears a little bit, and there's other systems coming obviously in 6.1. There's island sanctuaries. There's new stories. I won't say, I guess, one of them, because I guess that could be kind of spoilerish, but it involves a certain Lala. And then there's the new Hildebrand stuff, and obviously other things that are coming. What's the thing that you're most excited for, aside from maybe Crystalline Conflict?
I'm very excited about island sanctuaries, and I feel like they are doing this really cool thing where they're giving a piece of content for the PvPers, to kind of nourish that competitive nature as well. Even though they're not calling it competitive, but let's face it, we all know that it's going to be competitive.
Mhm.
So at the same time, there's the island sanctuaries where they are actively growing like the chill side of the community and the culture of just being calm, de-stressing after your things that you do, having your own space to decorate. However, I do think that people will still find a way to somewhat compete in it. People say the housing isn't competitive, but come on, housing
Well,
is
getting a house is competitive.
not just getting a house, decorating a house. I mean, Reddit, Pinterest, TikTok, and like all this social media where people will go out of their way to create these magical places. Like, I can't not call that competitive. Like, maybe I'm just a little bit of a competitive person, but
It is, but I don't think it's toxically competitive.
no, it's no.
Yeah.
Toxic is not necessarily competitive.
Right.
When I talk, those two things have nothing to do with one another, because I like the healthy competition, and I definitely think that going out of your way to create an awesome house is competitive, but it's also art, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're better than other people. But trying to make something as good as other people, or better, or unique, or whatever, is still a good way to play the game. Why not? And honestly, I doubt that people won't find a way to do that in island sanctuaries as well. If you have like an opportunity to customize your island or whatever, I can see massive opportunity for people who are super passionate about it to just go out of their way, create an awesome island, and just spend their days there trying to make it as good as possible. Maybe for themselves, maybe to show off to other people and their friends. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I think it's just such a great content to just kind of put your time into and not feel like you're missing out on anything like on the side. I feel like it's such an individualistic, great content that I think everyone should at least try. Me personally, my ex-husband, he recently started playing Stardew Valley, and every other day he's like, "Oh, you should play Stardew Valley," and I really want to. And every time I look at the game, I'm like, "Oh, I really want to play it," but like the graphics are so off-putting to me, and I just for some reason I just can't get over that. And now I'm getting Stardew Valley in Final Fantasy. I don't have to get out of my game to play another game, which is kind of perfect for me. So I'm completely excited about that.
I'm
And
sure Yoshi P would tell you to pump the brakes a little bit, because
I
he's
know,
like it's not Animal Crossing, it's not Stardew Valley, but
I understand that. I don't expect like a real Stardew Valley. I expect even to get something that is less than Stardew Valley, for as long as I don't have to quit my game to go into another game. So even if I get like a little less than that, I will still be perfectly fine with that. But I also think that it's a huge relief for the community, because this might be an unpopular opinion, but I do believe that the housing system has caused more toxicity within Final Fantasy XIV than PvP. Technically, it is PvP, but people
at
don't
this point
recognize
you
it
might
as
be
such.
right.
I mean, PvP, you can at least queue again. With the housing system, you spend like 20 hours sitting like this, and you go to bathroom, and you come back, and someone bought your house, and you're like, oh, like I want my house. And sorry, I'm still a little too scarred. I spent weeks hunting for our FC house, and it's an experience that I clearly shouldn't be going through again.
I gave up on, so I reached my goal. I've got my 50 million gil now. And
wow.
But people are like, well, why don't you try to get a house, small house or something like that now? I tried, for maybe a couple hours. And, after we're sitting there repeatedly clicking on something, I did it, I came back and did it another day and said, like, maybe I'll just luck out. I've just stopped looking, because I hate the system that they have right now. I don't know if I'm gonna love the what they call it, lottery system that they're putting in here soon. I might not get a house, but at least I feel like it's just one button I have to click. Go in there, put your deposit down. If you don't get it, you don't get it. It's not this sit there and spam click on the thing over and over and over again for up to 24 hours? Or up to 18 hours, something like
I
that.
think it's 24 hours.
That's
It's crazy.
yeah.
However, if you were gonna go back and try to do it again, I do think that 50 million is a very healthy amount of gil to go into hunting for a small house, because even if you do get it, you'll spend like 3.5 mil on the actual house,
Yeah.
and then with the rest 47 million you can go not ERP, RP, and find someone who will
Not
act as
ERP.
your psychiatrist and listen to like your rants about housing, and you can give them all their money and buy a month of their time and be like, "Ah!" you know.
Yeah, I know there's a couple things like I haven't dipped my toes into savage raiding or extreme trials just yet, and the reason that I haven't done it is because I know that side of me is going to come out, and I don't want it to. Like, I want to be chill, so that's why I just doing my crafting, doing this other stuff like to get my money, and just slowly earning my money that way, so that when the lottery does come around, if I get frustrated, it's just one time. It's just one time. I didn't get my mansion. When another one opens up, there's another lottery to participate in. It's not 24 hours of obsessive clicking to only lose to the 35 other people that are standing there.
Oh, I got that. I'm so scarred. I'm sorry, like I'm still going through
You
it.
don't have to apologize. I know. I mean, there's a reason it's called Housing Savage. So
Man, those those hard. And that's why I'm looking forward to the island sanctuaries, because I feel like it provides this like should I call it like the social house? Probably not, but like for everyone who can't really like afford a real house, they can have this like, I shouldn't even say budget version of the house, because it's free, right? And everyone gets a little something to work on while they're stressing about their, lotteries or whatever. I am a little bit worried about island sanctuaries, because I have been working hard on my progress with like other stuff, like leveling my jobs, doing my other stuff. And if I get into island sanctuaries, I'm just gonna live there. I'm just gonna not do anything.
you've got your main job capped. I mean, there's no pressure to get all the other jobs capped unless it's...
But I want the mount.
Yeah,
I need the mount.
I mean, that's coming from someone who has the mount, but at the same time, like
the Amaro mount.
yeah. I have everything capped at 90.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I want the bird. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get that bird.
That you only have to do for 80, but yeah,
when I get to 80, I'm like 90 is nothing. Let's go.
the 90. So I got to 80 on everything, like just towards the end of Shadowbringers, and
oh, nice.
And then for once Endwalker came out, it was just like, well, I just got to go 80 to 90 on all this stuff, and then 70 to 90 on the 2 new jobs.
Right.
But the reward is just like this dumb like plume thing for your hat. It's just a dumb hat for the level 90, getting everything up there. And I was like,
really?
Yeah, you go from having like one of the best mounts in the game, the Amaro mount. You get one of the best mounts in the game for getting everything to 80 in Shadowbringers, and then you get like a dumb hat and for level 90. I was kind of disappointed by it, but I guess not everything could be a mount. I was just expecting another cool mount.
Me, the reward is like switching to that job preview and seeing everything in orange. Like, I don't need anything else. I just really want that screen.
Yeah.
So satisfying.
Yeah, this might... I don't think it's really that big of a spoiler, but it'd be fun to have as a level 90 mount, Shinryu. A Shinryu mount. Like a mini Shinryu mount would be a good one.
No, like any kind of mount really would be amazing for me.
So, well, let's I have high hopes for Island Sanctuaries too.
Me too.
I hope that even if the 6.2 version of Island, I think when it's coming out, even if the 6.2 version of Island Sanctuaries isn't fantastic or isn't like all fully fleshed out, if it's just a house and you get to have your pets and stuff run around, that's good enough for then. But I hope that they keep building on it and iterating on it. And
They are going to. I mean, I don't see them just like releasing content and forgetting about it. Like Gold
Yeah.
Saucer as a piece of content is constantly getting updates. So
yeah, and I hope that, like Elio and I talked about on the last show, like my hope is that eventually they'll use it as a way to, reintroduce into some of the story, like some of the characters that you have interacted with that are just smaller characters that maybe don't fit into the MSQ or into some of those other side content. So, people that you've interacted with that have like fond memories of, the one that pops up to my head is always like Momodi, because I started in Ul'dah. So like maybe Emoti can or Momodi can drop by, and then maybe like Gabu could drop by, or someone like that could just drop by.
fun.
Yeah, and
Like what I like in sorry.
sorry, yeah, you just have the dinner party moment, but with all these other characters,
No, it's definitely pretty cool. And now that you mentioned this, it reminded me of like the Stardew Valley. I don't know if you played Stardew Valley, but like when you
Very
like log
little.
in, yeah, so from time to time, like you will get mail, like little messages from, I don't know, mom or someone like that or something. Like it would be so fun to have like a little inbox or a phone or something like that, where sometimes like all these like characters that you've interacted with will from time to time like make contact with you or something like that, or send you something cool, or I don't know. Like I'm not sure I like the idea of any sort of like quests where you would like get a quest within your island sanctuary for you to have to get out in the open world to meet that NPC. I don't think that would be a good idea. I just think that it should stay like within that world, and if they come, they do come to you, like you said.
Yeah, definitely not quests external to the sanctuary.
Yeah, no, it needs to be a closed ecosystem for sure.
Right. It's more, just like Stardew Valley or just like Animal Crossing, where it won't be a villager, right? Like Momodi's not going to move in next to you, or Kabu's not going to move in next to you. But it would be a system where they're like, hey, I don't know how this makes sense, but it's like, hey, I was in the neighborhood. Hey, I was just randomly got it on a ship and like sailed to your island.
Sims works, right? Like you will have like a house, and then you will have your like lane, and people can walk by it. And I don't know if you played we all
Sims
probably played Sims at some point.
A long time ago, but yeah,
but like you will have let's say you create like your other Sims families. Like if you move in next to the family that you created, from time to time you will see those characters like walking by, and you recognize them. So I don't know, like having them as your like neighbors who will just like walk past occasionally or something, it might not be a bad idea, because it can't really influence you to exit and go to the open world, but it can trigger like those nice memories, and maybe like a little interaction with them would be kind of cool.
Yeah, just someone that maybe an NPC that you did a little favor for or something like that.
Yeah.
A long time ago, you completed some side quest that wasn't a blue checkmark side quest, but with some little thing that you did for them. Maybe you brought them orange juice, who knows, and they just come to visit at some point just to say hi. And I think that fits the theme of this newfound adventure thing. Like you're back to just kind of being an adventurer again. Like it'll bring that world back down to that level a little bit, which I think will be nice.
Yeah, when it comes to that, I honestly hope that people take the title like very seriously, because a newfound adventure is something equivalent to, well, in my opinion at least, like starting a new season. Being a TV show person, like I will never go from like the finale of the season into a new season expecting the same thing. So I hope that when it comes to like the overall story and the experience, people really take the time to let them develop this new story and this new world. Like we can't possibly expect new shadowbringers or new endwalker or something like that. Like we need to meet new characters as well, who we will kind of grow this emotional attachment to. However, Final Fantasy XIV as a game has been, in my opinion, very good at getting you to feel things in a very short amount of time. This is not a spoiler section, is it? I should.
Let's switch gears since we're starting to kind
Yeah.
of bridge that gap.
Okay. Okay.
So for
Sure.
anyone who has not finished Endwalker, this is your
Oh, I
spoiler
would use.
warning.
I would use. I can be careful. I
Uh,
can not say words.
I like to talk about things openly. It drives me the spoilers things drives me crazy, honestly. And
Okay. Okay.
just to give you and anyone who's listening to this a little bit of preview, like the next video I'm working on is like a mock how to avoid spoilers in FF14 thing, because I'm a weirdo that will literally read the Wikipedia synopses of movies before I watch movies to know whether or not it's worth my time to watch that movie. It's like if the journey's not going to be worth it in the end, I'm not going to spend my time investing in it. So I'll just spend the 15 minutes ahead of time. People say, "Oh, that ruins the experience." It really doesn't for me personally. So I'm on the pro spoilers end of things, but I respect people who don't want them. So I don't want to spoil things for other people. But this,
That.
I'm sorry, it cut out there.
With movies, I get that. Like,
Mm.
I totally understand. Like, like I said, I'm a TV show person. I don't take movies lightly, and I only watch something if it's heavily recommended.
Yeah.
So I get it. Time is precious.
Yeah. But the one thing that drives me a little bit insane in the FF14 community is I'll get comments on some videos where it's like spoilers on this or spoilers on this. I'm like, literally, spoilers is in the title of the video. Like, don't I think there's this and I appreciate it, right? Because I know it comes from a good place. It comes from a place of not wanting to have the MSQ ruined for people. But then there's just this group of people that takes it to the too far, where it's like if you see a thumbnail for a video or you see a video that says, Endwalker Trial 2, this and that, and then you read on there's a comment that says spoilers. And I'm like, duh. Like, hello?
New content.
Right.
Like, I think that FF14 community is really, like, I don't know, really feeling strong about these spoilers. Like, that's
Mhm.
something that I never experienced in WoW, because in WoW spoilers are a given. In WoW,
Yeah.
you have the you have
PTR.
like the alpha and beta testing and PTR, where you will like, as soon as a raid cinematic of any sort shows up, you go to YouTube and you watch it. You don't wait until you see it in game.
Mhm.
And switching from that type of culture to Final Fantasy 14, where as an inexperienced FF14 content creator, I would, like, I don't know, put a thumbnail. There was a thumbnail, I think, at the, well, this is Shadowbringers thing, so I can talk about it. Basically, when I was
let's just say we're in spoiler territory now. If you're listening
yeah,
to us beyond this point, like, this
okay,
is your warning if you don't want things spoiled. So
okay.
thank you for listening.
Bye.
Don't let us ruin the story for you, because the story is good enough to warrant not having it ruined for yourselves.
Definitely.
And we
Like,
all agree with that.
yeah. Definitely. Like, I remember when I was since I make my own thumbnails for like streams and stuff, I remember this particular occasion where I was supposed to face Vothery in the trial.
Mhm.
And I typed in the name of the trial because I took it from like the wiki page or whatever, and I just pretty much blindly downloaded like the first print screen or whatever that I
Mhm.
could, and slapped it on my title and my thumbnail. And I didn't even know who the boss was. It wasn't telling me anything because it was the second stage picture of like the hot Valkyrie.
Yeah.
So then later on, people were like, maybe you shouldn't be using that. But like, if it didn't spoil anything to me when I was looking for that trial, how are people going to possibly know that person is someone who the character that you know of is transforming to? It was a very complicated discussion that I had with the community. I personally didn't think I was in the wrong, but after that, I've been so very careful when it comes to like thumbnails and everything, because I accept that the community is sensitive, and I am not going to be the one who goes against the current and be like, I don't care.
Right.
I do care.
To me, that's I think is a perfect example, right? Like, if you don't know hot Vothery is coming and you just see this golden haired, thing, you're just kind of like, oh, what's that? Now, if in your thumbnail you put Vothery Vothri looks like this now, you know, it would be, yes, like that's a spoiler in the
Yeah,
thumbnail.
same with Meteon, for example. Like I felt okay with like putting like the
The image
other
of Meteon, yeah.
not like I meant the Meteon from the actual trial, the Sunbird.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
That one, like you can't really make that connection. Like it's very hard. But still, like even when I went through the trial, I kind of edited the image so that it's unrecognizable to someone who hasn't gone to the trial. I was careful with that. I think I've been pretty careful with Medion to not post her goth pictures or whatever.
Yeah.
So there are these things that you don't necessarily want to do. But overall, I think there's something that I wanted to talk about when it comes
Yeah,
to
I mean, to me, it'd be like if you
can't remember.
To me, like the one image like I would never use in a thumbnail personally would be probably like Heidelin. I wouldn't use because the instant you see that space that you're fighting her in and everything, and also the design, it's pretty obvious that's Heidelin. You know.
Yeah, I get it.
And so I probably wouldn't use something like that in a thumbnail. Now, if it's been how many
A
months?
while.
It's been 4 months, 5 months since.
I think we're past the point.
Right. I think we're past the point too. And I think that if you want to avoid spoilers, like just I don't want to say just
don't type them in.
Don't be on YouTube, but
Yeah.
But that's kind of hard because the YouTube algorithm will recommend things to you, you know. So
yeah, but like sometimes you will see these pictures and you can't know for sure where that character is coming from, and you can just reconcile with the fact that you saw it, but you don't want to click on the video, and you're not going to research who that is and be like, oh, they had it spoiled for me because your curiosity ate the cat because you had to go up and look up who that was. Like some people will look it up and then will accuse you of spoilers because now I discovered that's a spoiler.
Or they'll have this inkling, like when they look at a video that there's going to be spoilers in it, and they click the video anyway, and then they complain about spoilers. I'm like, well, you had the agency not to click the video, you know. Now, if I create a video thumbnail that says, this is like my grieving, my therapy moment for this, but you know, if you see a video that is like, I don't know, the best ways to raise your chocobo. And then the video starts, and 5 seconds later, and you're like, by the way, Meteon's the end boss of Endwalker, and you know, like these people die, and and you just bait and switch them like you like rickroll them, but with spoilers. Yes, you are in the wrong, but that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. Like people just don't intentionally do these things. I think Final Fantasy community has been so very respectful when it comes to that, and I think I like the environment. I think it sometimes goes into the extreme, but I do like being surprised, and I
do
can't
too.
blame anyone. Yeah.
No, I think, you know, not having the story ruined for me at points has been fantastic. But I've been on YouTube. I saw things before they happened in the story in terms of, you know, heck, right when Endwalker came out, you know, it took me, because I was, you know, holidays and other things, like it took me a month and a half probably to finish the MSQ. So I was a lot further behind a lot of the people that just plowed through it right at the beginning, and they were already creating content for it. But you know, I saw a picture of Heidelin many times on YouTube before I fought her. I saw the pictures of Zodiark. I will say I saw plenty of the pictures of like the photo everyone takes at the end of Endwalker, the photo where it says like, and the Warrior of Light. So like I saw the battle arena where you end up fighting Xenos. I didn't know that you would be fighting Xenos in that space. But
creator, it's so hard to avoid these things because that's kind of where your job is. Like,
well, yeah, and Meteon, I saw pictures of Meteon before I got to Elpis. And not goth emo Meteon, but I saw like the little blue Meteon, and clearly I understood from the thumbnails that this is going to be a very important part of the story. But it didn't ruin it for me, you know, just seeing it.
Of course not. That's actually, I just remembered what I wanted to say now that you mentioned Meteon. The thing that we talked about when it comes to the story and how they're gonna like continue to develop. What I wanted to mention is that I'm so impressed with how little time it takes for them to introduce a new character that you will feel strongly about. And that's why I'm not
Yeah.
worried about like the new story kind of taking, I don't know, another 5 years to develop or something like that, because
Mhm.
with the writers team that we have in Final Fantasy 14, you can expect that within a single patch you can meet a character, fall in love, end up hating them, and then fall in love with them again, because that is just what they do to you, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's what they did with Neon.
Well, especially I would say with the track record, and honestly, I would go back to, well, get all of Heaven's Word too. I'd say since Heaven's Word really, but I think even Stormblood has introduced a lot of great characters that people really fell in love with very quickly. Even though Stormblood isn't viewed as like Shadowbringers or Endwalker or Heaven's Ward, it's viewed as a lesser tier than all of that. But I mean, Gosetsu, Yotsuyu, Asahi. I mean, as evil as that kid is, um, even I would say
For me, Stormblood is one of my most favorite expansions. I have very unpopular opinions about Stormblood, so I totally get it. Like when you talk
yeah.
about these characters, they're incredible.
Sadu, Serena, like Magni, Emperor Varus is essentially, I know he's introduced, I believe, in Heaven's Ward, but and the concept of him is introduced before then.
Fordola,
Fordola is a great
my
character.
god.
Arnvald. I think the majority, and maybe you and I could get in a disagreement with this. I think the majority, a problem that people have with Heaven's or with Stormblood is Lise is Lise to me in Stormblood is ARR Alphino in a different way. Like
I
like
see.
Alphino is very arrogant in ARR. Every time that
Mm-hmm.
kid shows up, I mean, you probably saw it from Asmongold and other people's stream. Like nobody likes Alphino, and everyone kind of forgets that no one really liked Alphino in ARR. I was always like, who's this kid walking in here telling us what to do? Minfilia's the boss. You shut up is like how I always felt about Alphino.
I see.
And then you go through the stuff with him in Heaven's Ward. And your first thought in Heaven's Ward, I remember my first thought in Heaven's Ward was, I gotta hang out with Alphino? Like,
No.
you had to stick me with Alphino? And I love Tataru, but I'm like, this is my party? Like, what are we doing here? And Alphino, I now consider my characters like like Alphino and Alize are my character's best friends in Graha now in my headcanon. But Alphino and my character have been through the most together at this point. And I can't, I'm excited for them, like you said, to create new characters and new adventures and things, but I'm also like really sad because I have such an attachment to Alphino and Alize and Ishtola and Thancred and Urianger and Graha and all of them, like Kryl, Tataru. I have such a attachment to all of them that it's going to be hard to like say goodbye, or not goodbye, but like not be around them as much is my thought, right? For the
To be
adventure
honest,
moving
like
forward.
I think I have like a little bit of a different theory as
Mm,
to what's actually going to happen. I think there's a very good reason why they decided to, not kill off everyone.
mm,
So, like when it comes to that, like I think there's a very strong reason for us having that last Endwalker cutscene where we went from like Scion to Scion and talked to them about it, because I feel like they didn't just like cut us off and left us in suspense as to like what's going to happen, who are the new characters going to be and stuff like that. I don't know if you have you seen Yu-Gi-Oh, like the original one?
no.
Okay, never mind.
All
Like
I know
basically,
is it's time to duel. That's the only thing I know about Yu-Gi-Oh,
yeah,
really.
well, basically about Yu-Gi-Oh, like you have this series that is like very beloved, and then you switch to another one where there's like a wholly different set of characters. I think that that's something that people are dreading when it comes to Final Fantasy, but I don't think that they're gonna cut us off like that. Think there's a very good reason why they went into details as to tell us all these individual stories. In my mind, what I'd like to see is more of these choices. Like, you know how when the new expansion starts, like for example, when I don't know Shadowbringers started, when you had the option to go and quest with Alice and then with Alphino, I honestly would like to see that kind of switch where
Mm,
you don't have like a linear path that everyone would follow. but maybe we get to explore these individual stories at our own pace. Imagine everyone having that MSQ, but like one of the MSQ quests, but each one of the sirens just like leading you a whole different way. And if they lead you into a new zone, you get to do like different things there, and you kind of get to pick like what you're going to do first. I really enjoy that system. I feel like it gives you the freedom to participate in the world as not just a character, but as a person,
Mm-hmm.
because you stand there and you see all those sirens having different quests. You want to choose your favorite one. You don't want to go with someone like, for example, if you could choose not to go with Alphino in Heavensward, you probably would have chosen someone else.
Yeah.
I mean, I want that choice. That is something that I would ideally really, really like to see. And I don't expect everyone's story to develop in like a super meaningful way for us to have like a whole nother, expansion based on, Oriange's journeys or something like that. But I do expect them to be the introductory characters into these new stories. I expect
Mm-hmm.
that we're going to learn something either about their history and about their heritage, or about their intentions as to where they want to go next. And then we follow along, and that is kind of where we meet other characters. But those people that we know, the people who have been our friends for years, are the ones actually taking us to these places
Right.
and kind of sticking around. That is something that I personally uh, think, I mean, not think that they would do. That's what I would want them to do, but we don't really know what's going to happen. I'm very, very curious about Meteon and about her, should I say redemption journey? Like, I don't mean redemption journey in a way that, like, for Dola has kind of gone through. She had like a hill to
Mm-hmm.
climb and everything, like after, switching sides and whatnot. But she kind of, came back with us in a way, and I'm really curious to see where they're gonna take her character development. I really hope that she is back in some sort of way. Some of these like characters that used to be our enemies later like come back like Xenos. Like I'm not saying that Meteon is gonna be the new Xenos who sticks around for like 5 different expansions, but I think that Meteon has such a massive potential to be a very important part of the new story arc. And I feel like we, even though Heavensward was emotional and kind of difficult to go through, I really want to see more of her. I don't think we spent enough time with
Mm-hmm.
Meteon, especially not with the new Meteon, now that she has all the knowledge and new hope and everything. Like that is what I'm personally intrigued in.
Yeah. I don't. To me, I think they wrapped up Meteon's story like
You think so?
beautifully. I agree. I don't think we spent enough time with her, but I don't know what else they could have done with her in that time. I think they accomplished all the main story beats with her, about losing hope and all this different stuff. The only,
Raha was done for after like Crystal Tower. I thought that was gonna be it, and
right,
they still managed to. I mean, you
right,
never know.
right. Yeah, I mean they could do something great with her for sure. I just don't know if they can do I just don't know what they could do with her. Like
Yeah.
Graha, there's a very clear connection, like with the Crystal Tower. That mystery box needs to be opened up again at some point in time, and they did a great job with that. With Meteon, it's like now she's just singing the song of hope. The only place that I see them taking Meteon, and this is something that's it would defeat the purpose of Endwalker if they were to do it, is someone captures Meteon and uses her song of hope, or tries to end her song of hope or something like that, like,
See.
or they kill Meteon, one of the
Mhm.
one of those things, and that killing of Meteon puts a dark cloud over the world or something like that.
I see
um
a different thing with Meteon. Honestly, if they were to continue these stories, like they talk so much about these destroyed worlds that Meteon got to visit. Like,
mhm,
what if there was a way to like bring like new hope to other worlds that have suffered through these losses or something? Like, what if we were to able to like visit, I don't know, those worlds with her at some point and like show to
mhm,
her that there's still hope and like discover these new things. Like it's probably not going to happen, but that is
right,
something that I'd be curious about when it comes to her, because that would give her a way to develop her character as this, hopeful songbird that now has a different purpose. Like, she came over there and accidentally destroyed everything, but now she
mhm,
gets to have her I don't know, maybe redemption by, fixing things. But it's
Yeah.
a lot of zones and a lot of worlds. I don't know if we're ready for
And then
that.
with the time, I think you kind of want to not mess with time travel that much too, because
Is it time travel?
I would think that it would be right. Like, I mean, Ultima Thule, you're able to do it because it's like the spirits, it's like the echoes of these people, right? But
Mm,
and
yeah,
that's why you're able to experience the dragon stuff. That's why you're able to experience the Aya and the Omicron and that type of thing.
technically, well, not ghosts, they're still there. So I kind of like, I had a feeling that those dragons were out of their time
Mm.
because, well, they're ghosts. But I felt like everything else in there is still in its time and place. I never really perceived that as legitimate time travel. I would just think of it as a new domain restoration in a way, like, okay,
Yeah.
this world is not ruined, let's go there. Try to make something of it.
To me, they're echoes of a past, right? They're echoes of a long
Mm-hmm,
a
mm-hmm.
long
I
hidden
see.
past, like similar to what Amarat is. Like that's the way I always kind of
Mm-hmm. I
conceived
see.
conceived all those
Yeah.
things. And because Ultima Thule, when you get there, it's just a voidless space, right? And then all of a sudden it gets filled with these things because of the sacrifices that your companions make. That
I
so
see.
so so you're not messing with the flow of time, right? But let's say
Yeah.
we went back to the dragon world, the actual dragon world with Meteon and fix things like that. Changes the course of history, that changes Heaven's Ward, that changes all of
Totally.
that. So I don't know, I would just leave it. I don't know, for me I think I would probably
Focusing
leave
more on
Meteon
like
alone.
survivors, if there were any.
Hmm.
Like us discovering that there is still hope, not like going back in time, because that would kind of defeat the purpose of hope. Like going somewhere with the hope that there is something still to look forward to there, and then you discover that not everything is lost because she kind of came over there, or the sisters came over there with the attitude that like all is lost, and they just kind of ended up having everything be actually lost. But
Yeah.
like the hope that there's still something there leads you into exploring and realizing that not everything is lost. But that's probably not gonna happen. So
Here's I think a really interesting small story that you could do with Meteon. So Meteon and Hermes have a very tight connection, and Hermes,
mm,
like essence was essentially sundered. And Amon is dead now at this point. Asahi is dead at this point, but Asahi was just the body. Um, I could see Meteon helping out maybe a distraught reflection or shard of Hermes' soul. Like maybe there's a piece of Hermes' soul out there that is, well, Hermes himself was very sad. Like he was literally, to me, Hermes was like the embodiment of sadness and depression and not being able to cope with it very well, and she has to bring joy to that one piece of Hermes' shard, and that's like her way of also saying goodbye to Hermes in a way. I don't know, like that to me I
it
think
kind
would be
of
a really
hasn't been
good
concluded.
small story between her and Hermes. But I have this speaking of characters that you want to have be brought back, I have this desire to and this is what I was kind of brainstorming with Elio last episode, was when Emmett gives you that list of like, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done that? Like, I kind of hope that Emmett, especially with like the New World and the maybe Mericidia and some of the other places that he references, it seemed like Emmett's whole purpose was to literally sow the seeds of chaos throughout our world. From my understanding, even though it's not made like really, really explicitly clear, I don't believe. I mean, he basically created the Allegan Empire, more or less. Even if he wasn't Emperor Zandi himself, he was still behind the creation of that. Um, and then he created the Garlean Empire to sow the seeds of chaos. So he was probably sowing the seeds of chaos all over the planet, all over Atheris. So my hope is that like by him telling us like, have you looked at the state of affairs in the New World, or have you looked at the state of affairs over here, is that he was like in a subtle way saying, hey, I was messing with all these places for a really long time. Could you clean up my mess? Like, because otherwise it's going to careen down a bad path. That would be my hope. That way you can still have some Emmett like narration in the background, where even though his
Yeah.
spirit has moved on, he can still be like, and here's where I messed up this stuff, and like kind of like how it
Yeah, I
happens
feel
throughout
sorry
Endwalker.
for it now, so you should
Yeah.
probably go check on him. Definitely. It's like they say, you either die a villain or you become the living embodiment of Final Fantasy XIV commercial for the next expansions,
Yeah.
which is kind of what he's become, and I think it's awesome. It would be really painfully obvious if they just kind of put these these names of these like cities and worlds there for you to think about it. But now that, like you said, like sowing the seeds of chaos, maybe he's sowing the seeds of our imagination for like the next expansions, and like making us wonder about these new cities, these new zones. I'm glad that there's a, if those places end up being like new zones to explore and whatnot, I'm glad that they are at least not like out of this world. You know how like in World of Warcraft you had like Azeroth, and then suddenly like in this new expansion, there's shadowbringers, there's like this whole new world that has nothing to do with anything. But I feel like if we were to go into these other places, they at least have something to do with what we've done by him just kind of subtly mentioning them already. So that is definitely something that I'm looking forward to. I wonder if, as a warrior of light, like, are we gonna have like a new job, as in like a new big task to do, or are we gonna like go through this like existential crisis and like go from one side to another, be like, hey, I need something to do, can you take me along with you on your adventure?
My guess is that's going to be like 6.1 through 6.3 is like
I think
the existential crisis of like, okay, we saved the universe, like what do we do now?
give me something to do. Yeah,
I mean, that to me is why like Tataru's grand adventure is a thing, is like Tataru's always been driven by purpose. Like she doesn't need the end of the world to have a purpose. She's going to go build her mercantile empire thing, now that she's got some extra free time.
She lived like with the four lords. She went to like, I don't know, Kugane, to Mordona, like everywhere. So I'm not worried about her at all.
And I think that's one of the things I love about the Lalas is I don't think I've ever seen. Well, I mean, Nanamo has a growth structure to her, right? Like where she has grown into a strong leader.
She's like a domestic cat. She doesn't go out of her area. Tataru's like a stray kind of.
But even true. But even like, Nanamo starting as a young leader to becoming probably like the most efficient and effective leader, because she's been through very difficult stuff of the entire, grand company of Eorzea. Like she's the one leading the table basically when you have that negotiation with Varus, because she's had to deal with Lolorito. She's had to deal with almost getting assassinated. She's had to deal with all these different things that she's hardened by all of it, but she's still got that sense of purpose. But the thing I love about the Lalas is I don't think there's a single Lala out there that I can think of that's had this like existential crisis, or like, nothing's too big for them, nothing's too small for them. Like, if I'm going to start a business, okay, let's go start a business. So I'm going to do this.
We're adaptable.
Yeah, they're very adaptable. Whereas you look at like the stuff in Yulmore and Shadowbringers, and everyone there is having like an existential crisis when their little tea party gets messed up. And the Lalas just aren't like that. They're just forge ahead. Lalas are like the definition of forge ahead. I guess. Yeah.
Maybe there's a good reason why there aren't as many Lalas in Newfound. I mean,
yeah,
it's like they would adapt too well.
Yeah, they would probably take over the place. They'd be like, all right, Vothri,
like develop industry and whatnot. Yeah. Like they would just like completely run the economy and everything.
They'd certainly improve the culinary experience. People wouldn't be eating meal in Yulmore, because maybe that's why Vothri doesn't allow many of them there.
Maybe.
But then again, there are no Lalas in the first. It's the dwarves, right? And they have a very different culture, so that explains it too.
And probably very different tastes too.
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
Maybe they smell like beer and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I love the dwarves. That gives me a lot of faith though for the future of the Final Fantasy 14 story, is that, as it's connected, but then it's also very disconnected. It's Shadowbringers. They brought us to a whole new world, and they introduced us, like you said before, to like brand new characters like Reen and Lena, and um to a lesser degree, what's the guy that like is in love with Ishtola, Runar, and other people,
And then Aya, like for someone who's done like raids and stuff, like she's very important. I
Yeah.
wish she was in the actual story as well, because like she does make an impact on the
Mhm.
story without you ever seeing her if you don't do the raids.
Yeah. And it's also basically modeled after one of my friends, like Sarah Jane. It's a dead ringer for Gaia. But there's so many new characters there that were introduced. I mean, Emmett Salk was essentially a new
Yeah.
character too, that have just been done so well. And I'm excited for the new characters. I just don't want to say like fully goodbye to the old ones. And I think, I'm really excited too. I like, the thing I love about Shadowbringers is that it is this kind of like self-contained world. And when you save it, you kind of just save it. There's more to do, but you've effectively kind of saved it. It feels very classic Final Fantasy to me, which is very like, you save the world, but not everything's perfect at the end of every one of those games. Like that there's more stories to
Right.
tell.
It's
But
not like, I like comparing it to Shadowbringers a little bit. Like I like how you can still, I don't know, go there and still feel like you have a reason. Because well, first of all, you've left some people behind. You left
Mhm.
Green there, and you kind of, want to go there and like check on her, and you keep wondering if we're ever, gonna go back and like do stuff there. It feels possible. It feels like you're not, as a warrior of light who still has this ability to like travel and whatnot, it still feels like your job there doesn't have to be done. And I like how from time to time, sometimes like new things will pop up in the zones that you thought you were done with. Like, okay, Ishgard housing is probably not a great example, or Firmament or whatever, but like it is some form of story and new content that has been taken back to a place you thought you were done with, and that's what's
Mhm.
making it feel like a world that's developing. It's not just like creating a zone, finishing the content, moving on to the next one, to the next one. It creates such a great amount of zones unnecessarily, because you don't mind seeing the same zone. If you have something new to do within
Right.
it, why not do it?
Right. Whereas, like Warcraft, Shadowlands is the Shadowlands.
Can you name all
Kulturus
the
and
zones
Zandalar.
in Kalimdor and Eastern Kingdoms?
No, because
No, me
you
either.
don't. I mean, you spent the time there initially. Well, and a new player would probably not spend any
Yeah.
time there. And yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
sorry. Do
yeah.
you
Go ahead.
know like a really really sad quest that like makes you realize how little you actually know? I don't know if you've done this. I think it was introduced in Legion.
Mhm.
There's a that mailman quest where you have to go through like series of like quizzes where they will like give you
Oh yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
do you remember that?
Yep.
Like that particular quest, I feel like they shouldn't have put that quest in the game at all, because all that quest does is like makes you feel so sad when you realize how little you actually know about the world. Like
Hmm.
you don't even know these zones, like you don't know where they belong. You don't know if they belong in Draenor or Kalimdor or whatever. Like why did they even make that quest? To make their player base feel bad about the amount of zones that they made that they never visit?
Right. Well, I mean,
Uh,
every new zone is disposable, right? Like in Warcraft,
yes,
it
yes,
like
and
this.
it's so sad.
The Shadowlands is closed up now, so it's disposable. We're not going back. We were on Argus and Legion. That's the Broken Isles. We were there. We're done with it. We were on
You
Pand.
fixed it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
that
were on Pandaria. We're done with it. The only time that they did that in Warcraft was with Cataclysm, when they completely revamped the old world. Um,
they introduced the new zones that
well,
like you had something to.
they completely changed the original zones
Yeah.
too, and that I think was a really interesting idea, because then that was the first time the world felt like it was evolving and changing as a whole, not just as
Mhm.
different things. But I mean, so often, like we've rarely ever went back to Northrend. We've never
Yeah.
rarely ever went back to our modern day Draenor. It's just like,
Draenor was a good idea, like as a
yeah.
as a continent that you go back to, like in time and
Mhm.
and try to do things. I don't understand that the time implications of you changing
No, I'm
something in
talking
the
about
past.
the Burning Crusade Draenor, right? Because there's the Burning Crusade
Yeah,
Draenor,
right.
and then
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
the time travel Draenor from Warlords of Draenor, right?
Yeah. So
So so
complicated.
so there's two Draenors there, but they're in different time periods. But yeah, the time travel can of worms that opens up between that is, they have to explain it like the Marvel thing where it's like it just creates another branching path type of thing, and you're not on this path, they're on this path type of thing. And it's funny because everyone compared the jailer to Thanos. It's like you got to get the 5 gauntlets, 5 stones to put in the
Yeah.
gauntlet thing. And I don't know if the Final Fantasy or the Marvel comparisons are the best. But Elio, I can't remember if he and I were talking about this on the podcast last time or if we were talking about it offline. But he has this thought, like maybe like one of the reflections of the shards, like one of the other reflections of the world, turned very militaristic and bad, and like tries to invade another one of the reflections of the shards, like maybe tries to invade your world. I think that could be an interesting story because we kind of assume that every one of the reflections of the shards is maybe like just good people just trying to do the right thing. What if like an entire
Yeah.
shard turned out to be like a horrible, I don't know, like Nazi world, basically? And
Yeah, I get it.
like like maybe a reflection shard where like the whatever their version of the Garlean Empire won, and spread out, and there are good people there. They're good people, and that's one of the things I think FF does so well is it writes very nuanced villains. Like every villain has a humanity behind them. They're not just
Yeah. Black and white. Yeah.
right. Yeah. Black and white. So there would be some really interesting stories to tell from that, because it wouldn't just be a bunch of mustache twirling villains like rolling into your world. There would be a lot of complexity to that. But I think that could be interesting. But then that to me just seems like, well, that's just multiverse that they're doing in Marvel right now.
But I think the best thing about the way they create villains is that you can sometimes identify with those villains a lot more than you can identify with the good guys, because you feel some things that they also go through. I talked about this on stream and many times as well, like why I can identify with like the attitude that Meteon has as well, because my parents did a very silly thing when I was a kid. They tried to explain death to me when I was like 4.
Oof.
And it was bad. Like I literally remember, like those are my first memories that I have. Like I literally remember feeling like I've lost all the purpose. Like I didn't understand why my parents even had me, and I felt so depressed by the fact that I'm gonna die. It's like, why did you even make me if I'm not immortal? And like it took me like months of recovery through, like, I don't know, coloring color books and whatnot to just kind of get over these feelings. And that's why when I first like encountered Meteon and like understood her reasons for feeling so desperate, I was like, hey, I would have been that person, if I was a toddler and if I had those powers, I would probably have felt the same way.
I mean, honestly, I felt that way for the last couple of years. There's a lot of things where confront getting older and confronting your own mortality in a more tangible way is a very frightening thing. It's a very
Yeah.
very tough thing to overcome, right? That to know like you're here only for a certain amount of time, and like what does your life mean, and all this different type of stuff. It's something I've been struggling with, honestly, for the last couple of years. Just being now probably
Kids issue for sure.
yeah, being now in my closer to 40 than 30 at this point in time, and dealing with what that means. Like they say midlife crisis, and that's a saying that we have, like at least in the United States. Like midlife crisis is a real thing, and I always used to laugh at that concept because I always used to say like, well, I want to be 40 years old because then I'm established and like I'm an adult and people have to listen to me then, or what, all these different things. Because that's how I used to think as a kid, is like, I
Yeah.
want to be that old because then like no one can tell me what to do.
And then everyone tells you what to do and you have to do it.
Right. Well,
You're still there.
but then you're older too, and you're like, oh, but now I've only got so much time potentially to enjoy this, or things could just be done right around the corner at any point in time, and that's a you can relate. I think everyone can relate to Meteon in that sense, and I think that a lot of people can relate you know, maybe not to the horrific acts that Meteon commits or the horrific acts that Emmett Selk commits, or, all these, different characters. Like, no one's condoning the acts that Emmett Selk does, but you understand them.
They're the right thing to do from their perspective.
Right.
I never thought that Emmett Selk as a character, especially like in Shadowbringers, I never thought he was fighting for the wrong thing. He was fighting for the exact same thing we were fighting for. He was fighting for his people. It was just between me and him, us and him. So it's never really wrong. You can never really fully hate someone except for like the burn out the bad guy. I don't know if you've done the quest line.
Which one?
The story of Verlet, like the like the guy with the milk and whatnot. Like, he's the kind of villain who you like really try hard to find something like good about him, but you're like, darn it, I can't. I really cannot. Well, and then you take personal pleasure in him being like
squeezed. Yeah. I couldn't, when I was making the horror game like trailer thing.
Yeah, you did.
I put him in there. I really wanted to include that moment where like they squeeze and then you hear the pop, like it goes. There's a squeeze and they go.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to include that in there, but
the chat told me to turn up the volume.
but I couldn't get it to the point like where visually it made as much sense because it just drags on too long. So I made the creative decision to cut it, before that. But
we knew it was there.
Yeah,
that's what matters.
But like him, like he is, to me, he wasn't really. I mean, he's a villain, of course, but he was more of a vehicle and a reflection of Gaius. That's what people, I think, thought Gaius was like. That's what people, that's what Gaius could have been. But in seeing him, you realize like the humanity within Gaius. So for me, he was just a vehicle for communicating the true complexity of Gaius. No,
I'm very biased. He was a child molester.
100%.
He got it coming.
Yeah, he deserves everything that he got. I just mean like from a writing and storytelling perspective. Is he was a plot device for Gaius more than he was an actual villain. But anytime like anytime they write a villain, there's a lot of even Xenos, and Elio's brought me around on this quite a bit. Xenos has a lot more complexity to him than you kind of initially think, where he's just wants to fight and doesn't care if he lets the world burn around him. There's a lot more complexity there. Just like there's a lot more complexity with like someone like Vothri.
Definitely.
Like Vothri, has been told his whole life that he is righteousness and he is good. And that I think is like a cautionary tale of, when you tell your child that they are incapable of any wrongdoing and that they are, the best. And why are they the best? Not because they've worked at it, because I've told you that you're the best, and that's Vothri's just kind of a victim of that method, that method of raising a child. And you see it when you kill him. And he's like, but I'm all like, he's like a child. He just doesn't understand why, people are being mean to them.
Most villains in Final Fantasy XIV are just victims of circumstances. I feel like it's very hard to fully hate a villain. Like even in the Omega raids, right? Like as you go through it, you can't really hate the robot, right? Okay, they want to destroy the world and whatnot, but you get it. Like, you get how they're programmed, you understand what you're fighting against, and there's not a lot of room for like hate, I guess. In World of Warcraft lately, there hasn't been a lot of room for hate either when it comes to villains, for example, but that's only because of the lack of information. It's like everyone's telling you that you need to hate the jailer, but you don't know why you need to hate the jailer, so that hate never really, got flushed out, because, like, in reality, he hasn't killed anyone. Like, he hasn't done anything wrong, right? Right?
I mean, you've not... I'm trying to think. I don't think you...
I don't think he has blood on his hands.
Well, no, I mean he certainly has blood on his hands in
Yeah,
terms
okay, well,
in terms of the like if he's responsible for the Burning Legion
destruction
and
of the
like
world. Yeah,
yeah,
okay,
if
yeah.
he's responsible for Sargeras and all these other things, that's what I think people got really upset with. Was it's like, all right, we're gonna make this new character and he's gonna be the mastermind behind everything, but then when
Like the
I'm
retcon was.
I'm trying to think though in game have we ever seen the jailer actually himself kill anybody? The only thing that I can think of
Oh,
that we've seen the jailer actually do himself was like choke Bane at the top of that thing, you know, at the very beginning of the intro scenario, and he's like worthless, and he throws him off the thing. I've and then you know you could argue the stuff that he has Sylvanas do to Anduin is pretty messed up, but oh, and then the
I wonder, like
the
maybe we're all to
domination thing.
blame.
But even the
Like maybe
even the domination scene at the end of the Sylvanas fight when he you know he dominates Jaina and Bolvar and Thrall and Sylvanas has that "I'll never serve," and I'm like, he's literally said serve like 20 times before this, and now you're triggered by it. But but he lets them all go. He's like, stop. I'm gonna go through this portal, and then you're okay. Like he could have just dragged them all with him. Like
it has made sense, but well, like what I'm trying to compare here is that like this is the kind of lack of hate where you have because of like the lack of information, and in Final Fantasy 14 you understand why it's hard to hate someone, and I feel like Meteon is like the embodiment of that because you like finish the Endwalker quest line and you're like, oh, I want to hate you so bad, and you never do because
no. Well, and I think also too the choice to make her a small child is also one where you automatically, and that's why I think they're able to introduce her like at level 85, 86 and then turn her into the end villain of everything and have it be satisfying is because they know by making her a childlike figure, even though she's not really a child, making her a childlike figure automatically garners sympathy, right? It automatically garner
maybe.
because you're
I
like,
mean,
oh,
she
you.
is child, I'd say.
But at
Um,
the point that we meet her again, so when we meet her in Elpis, she's definitely a child.
okay.
But
Yeah.
like when by the point we meet her again at the end of Endwalker, she is literally, you know, as basically as old as like Emmett Selk and Hythlodaeus, and
Yeah.
like old, like really old
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
point. But
And you could
she's
argue that like all the different Meteon's experiences have like kind of piled on top of each other and made her personality really old. And I
yeah.
actually had a really interested discussion with the chat when it comes to that. Like if they made her, I don't know, if Meteon was like, I don't know, 20 years old or whatever, like if she was made to be 20, but if she was made like day before yesterday, what is Meteon really? Is Meteon who she is within her body? Is she a 20-year-old or is she a 2-year-old? And how is she going to be referred to? So there's a lot of stuff to consider when you think about the timeline, like when Meteon was originally made. How old was she really when she was made to go to all of these journeys? And how long were these journeys and these collective consciousness that compiled into, you know, the Meteon that we know at the end of Endwalker? Like how many years did those experiences add? Because technically she was kind of split into different bodies, but I like to add these years of travel and everything to that same one person, and yeah, she's old.
Yeah, yeah, and but I think just by having her speak in a very young voice, like
Yeah.
like when we kind of cure our Meteon, and she's flying around the End Singer, and she's like, "No, stop it!" Like it feels like a young girl, like saying those things,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think for most of us, like our parental instincts kick in, and we go, we have to protect the child,
Yeah.
is the way that it feels, but. Yeah, I mean, there's so many amazing directions and so many cool stories that we could tell, going from here, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Like,
Yeah, me too.
um,
It's gonna be incredible.
and I know that it's in the hands of people who know how to write a story, you know.
I have full trust in them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it has been an amazing 2 hours and 13 minutes so far of recording this show. I know that you have to go stream here pretty
Actually
soon.
already postponed my stream slightly so that I can dedicate myself to this fully, so don't
Okay.
worry about it. I
Okay.
wanted to take the time and talk to you about these things. No worries.
Yeah, it's definitely been fun. So, um, I appreciate you being a guest here. Do you want to plug your social links and YouTube channel and everything for people who may not have heard of you before?
Like, what do you mean?
Like, tell people where they can follow you on Twitter and
Yeah,
what your
sure,
YouTube
sure.
channel's
Well,
called and everything.
mostly everything is condensed on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is Mom's Den, but I go as V, but yeah, you can pretty much find everything on my YouTube channel. There's Instagram, which is also Mom's Den. There's Twitter, which is Mom's Den. There's TikTok, also Mom's Den. Pretty much everything, like everywhere I'm at, I go by the same name. So that is how you can find me. And additionally, we also have a Discord server, and you can find that like I think in pretty much every one of my YouTube videos descriptions. And we have a lovely growing community. And if you're interested in getting to know us, I highly encourage you to pop into our Discord and say hi.
Great. Definitely give V a follow on YouTube and all her social media, and join her Discord as well. You could join my Discord at the Popoto Pub. It's pretty much in the description of most of my YouTube videos at this point, and on Twitter and other places as well. So if you're not already a member of that, would love to have you join there. I'm really excited for when cross data center travel opens up and I can actually start playing with more people. I think that's going to be an amazing addition.
I've been so lonely.
Especially to the larger community as well. Like a lot of other content creators and I have been talking about how great it's going to be able to actually play together finally. But we'll have to wait a little bit longer for that. But V, again, thank you so much for being here today and joining the Popoto Pub. Would love to have you back on another episode sometime. I'm sure we've got a lot more to talk about, and there will be a lot more new things to talk about once the game continues to get updated and more content comes around. So
Thank me. I'd be excited to come back.
And definitely appreciate it. And thank you for listening to this episode of the Popoto Pub. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, share these videos because it definitely helps the channel out. And wherever you're listening, whether it be on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, appreciate you spending this time with us. So, lolly ho, everyone. Peace out.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Popoto Pub. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more episodes. Take care, everyone, and peace out.